One of the things that Debbie wanted me to talk about is kind of hope and dealing with loss. I ended up being a triathlete and blew out my knees, so running and hard impact sports were not possible for me. And so I had to adapt to challenges for myself that would be something that I could do, and that's how I got into kayaking. I moved to Minnesota in 2006, and I had been kayaking since 2003 in California, where I was living in the ocean. But moving to Minnesota was really a foundational change for me because I had access to water everywhere. I could, I never owned a kayak in Cali, but when I moved to Minnesota, I didn't have a lot of money, so I bought a $100 kayak from Walmart, and it was kind of like, when you're a little kid and you learn to ride a bike, and that feeling of freedom that you have, that you're not just bound by where you can walk to. The kayak was the same thing for me, and I was 40-something years old when I got that. I kind of started thinking about, it would really be nice to do a big trip someday, and I've been a big fan of the Pacific Trail and the Appalachian Trail, which are two coastal hikes. They take about 6 months. I had a cousin that hiked the PCT, and living in Minnesota, when the book Wild came out, I read it right away, and I think I read it, finished it, and then started reading again. It got me thinking, I really want to do a life-changing trip like that. My knees were never going to let me do that, and then I kind of took a step back, and I was living in Minnesota, and that is where the headwaters to the Mississippi River are. So I thought maybe I could do something like that, and it was really kind of I'll do it when I retire or something, some way that down the road. But it got me thinking, and that was a long-term goal for me. But there were a lot of shorter-term goals that I had to address. Well, how can I paddle for more than 10 miles? I mean, I had never paddled for more than 5 miles. So it was kind of building myself up to that. Can I paddle on water that's big with waves and big boats and all that stuff? So I had to kind of teach myself to do that. And it's all kind of just through trial and error and experience. In 2021, January, I had my right knee replaced because that was one of those things that had been limiting me for most of my life. And that gave me another opportunity for a short-term goal, which was to paddle the length of the Tennessee River, which is 652 miles. And I had my replacement on January 13th, and we launched on the Tennessee on April 13th. So it was 3 months before of rehab. So I had some really difficult work to go through that rehab, but knowing that I had a start date on the 13th of April was what drove me through all of the painful PT and all that, frustrating pain management, and that's what got me through it and onto the river. Decided to do my left knee in later that year so that I could have it covered by insurance, and had the knee done on November 1st. Came back 3 days later, was in my recliner for 3 hours, and I had a massive stroke, which was a blood clot that was caused by the knee replacement. So I was rushed to the ICU. They had to do emergency brain surgery. My wife was told, we're not going to sugarcoat it. We don't know if he's going to come out, and if he does come, what'll be left of him that you love. So thankfully I came out of it, and I recognized her when I saw her for the first time. But it's been 6 months of really intensive work with pain, coming to grips with what the deficits that I'm dealing with right now, and that would be I have no feeling from my shoulder blade to the tips of my fingers in the right and the left hand, which obviously is kind of a problem if you want to go kayaking. So I've been working really hard to rewire my brain to get those nerves to talk to my brain so that I can regain function. So I've probably got 60% of my functionality back just through the work I've been doing. And it's, 3 hours and 4 hours a day of PT and cognitive testing. But one of the things that really motivates me today is, it took me a while in talking to my wife to get the timeline down, but as near as I can tell, when I was in brain surgery, I had this vision where I was in a small cafeteria, kind of one of those dream-like states where the people around you are very clear and vibrant, and everything else is kind of a soft glow, right? And at the table with me was a little vase that had African violet in it, and a beautiful purple African violet. And then my mom, just in the way I remember her, as beautiful as she was. And then my wife's mother, who had passed away from COVID in 2020, they were both at the table with me drinking coffee, and it was the best coffee I've ever had. And it was one of those things where you're talking, but it doesn't feel like you're talking, and nobody's lips are moving. It was almost like there was some kind of a, telepathic communication, until my mom reached out and she touched my left hand, which is the one I can't feel. And she looked me in the eye and she said, "Jeff, you're gonna be given an amazing gift in the next few minutes. And I want to make sure that you make the most of it and help as many people as you can after you come out of this." And it really took me 2 or 3 weeks to really have that kind of come together in my head as what had happened. And so that is now why I am dedicating my life to helping people that have survived strokes to find the motivation and the inspiration to push themselves beyond the pain and the limitations that they have now and set goals for themselves. I mean, my goal is paddling, right? So my next thing is next year paddling the Erie Canal. So it's like, whatever your goal is, find your Erie Canal and set those goals and do the work and be brave enough to suffer through the disappointment and the pain to get to those goals. So that was a long intro, I apologize. but that's kind of what brought me to you guys. And one of the things that I'll be leveraging is my blog and my YouTube channel to get that message out. So I'll be starting a channel that dedicates myself to speaking about stroke recovery and interviewing people that are inspirational or medically, in the medical field and all that. So trying to reach as many people with that message as I can. So the fact that I got invited by my sister today is perfect, because this is my calling, and this is my goal. Since November, I'm finally able to talk semi-coherently. I hope you guys can understand me. To a group of people that are at a point in life that everything is possible. And when I was in your shoes, I had no idea what was coming in my life. And all you can do is set goals and strive for them and hope and work and be able and flexible enough to adjust as life throws you curveballs along the way. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
What were you like when you were our age?
I was a teeny little nerdy guy that was scared to death of girls, and this would be the last place, high school me would want to be, standing right here. But I loved the outdoors, and I had a passion for the environment, and I loved the challenge of physical exercise. So I was always looking for things to challenge myself.
I don't remember ever having that vision, by the way, as his littlest sister. of you being a skinny little nerdy guy. Like, it's so funny that you say that, because it's literally not even close to what, like, in my little mind.
Well, that's
You
always,
were.
that's kind of like what we
Perception
think
versus
of
reality.
ourselves in our own
Yeah.
mind doesn't necessarily translate to how other people see us.
No, he was completely like my hero and idol, so he was not a skinny little guy at all. There are pictures, Jeff used to take a lot of pictures when he was your age, and then he would actually develop them in my mom's like pantry downstairs in the basement, in a dark room. And he's got pictures of going to Formula One races, and he's got pictures of hanging off of cliffs. And were you planning on going to college? I don't remember.
I didn't think I was smart enough. I was a horrible high school student. I mean, it took everything I could to get a C average on my GPA. I mean, it was touch and go.
What did you learn about society through kayaking?
Oh God, I was hoping somebody would ask me. So the Mississippi River trip, that was probably the most eye-opening experience I've ever had in my life. When you start off on the Mississippi River, you start in way northern Minnesota, maybe 100 miles south of the Canadian border. And you paddle almost 340 miles just in the state of Minnesota. And the state of Minnesota has kind of embraced the Mississippi because they're the home state of it, right? And there are these people that are referred to as river angels. And they have started these Facebook groups. So Mississippi River Paddlers is one of them. I got associated with them. And these people, they're people that live on the river. Have, their families have been on the river for 100 years, and they open their houses to people that are paddling, And what I learned is that it doesn't take any money to be a decent human being, because there are people on the river. There's an old CCR song that says people on the river are happy to give, and that is absolutely true. These guys, they're living in small trailers, and they will go above and beyond to help you. And in the kind of the polarized political environment we now live in, what I learned is that when you are dealing with just real life issues, there is more that unites us than divides us. I mean, you can always find something to argue about, but when I would say 99% of the people that reached out and helped us on that 90-day trip were probably not voting the way I voted, but that didn't matter. I mean, they helped when they could help. They were caring, and everybody, all of us in the room are on a journey, right? We're living our story, and the people that you come across, you have a chance to bring them into your story, and that gives them a chance to bring you into theirs. So, these people will be like, remember that guy we met on the Mississippi? He was crazy. It's like they're going to tell their friends about that, And I tell all of my friends, all the great people that I met. I mean, it was a really cool experience.
Is there any one that stands out more than another?
Wow.
From either one? Either trip? You gotta read his blog if you want to.
Yeah. I would say there was this guy, he's a Cajun. He's in the bayou of Louisiana. So the way we got to the Gulf is the Mississippi takes you through New Orleans to the Gulf, but there are probably 1,000 ocean-going ships on that stretch of the river, and I'm in a 15-foot kayak, and that's an unfair fight. So we decided there's a river called the Chapalaya, which actually has been trying to capture the Mississippi for over 200 years, and the Army Corps is battling that river with all the levees and all that to keep the river flowing through New Orleans. but the Chapelaya takes you exactly to the same spot on the Gulf. And it's a beautiful stretch. It's about 150 miles of bayou and swamp, and really, it's stuff you'd see in a movie. And there's this guy, Danny Major, who he says he's retired, but I think he's just one of those guys he's always got a couple of fingers in the pot, but all he does is he has enough to live, right? But I mean, people paddle by him, and sometimes they'll stay for a night, sometimes they'll stay for a week. He had a guy living in the loft of his pole barn that had been there for 6 months because he kind of was kind of lost, and he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his life. And he was, if it wasn't for Danny, he would have been homeless. And that guy, and Danny helped him to get some training and kept him fed and clean. And eventually he went off and renewed his life. So Danny Major he made us the most amazing Cajun meal, and we're like, why are you making this today? He's like, well, these are the ingredients that I have. When you're a Cajun, you make whatever you can with the ingredients you have. I had potatoes and I had rice, and it's like, if it would have been next week, he wouldn't have had any of those, and it would have been something else. He would buy MRIs from the discount military, and he would pass them out to the homeless daily. He gave and gave and gave. He was just a beautiful soul.
What is the most important message you want us to leave with today?
Okay, I think the most important thing that I've learned, and obviously I'm just a person that's lived my life, and I've been doing it a little bit longer than you have, which I guess makes me an expert, but I think Debbie, what does my shirt say?
Pertinacity.
What did it do?
Got the turtle to the ark.
I also have a shirt that says never, ever, ever give up. Because life can be hard, right? And you only fail at it if you quit. You just have to, that's why I think it's really important to have goals and hope. And be willing to tweak those as you learn more and grow as a person to get you to a place. You're never gonna reach, happiness is not a goal that you drive up to it like an address. Happiness is something that lives in your heart. You can choose to live a happy life and be kind of welcoming to great things, or you can choose to be a kind of a person that just sees what's wrong with it, and that you can't change what life throws at you. All you can do is change how you respond to what life throws at you.
Is there any point on either of the trips that you were like, this is stupid?
No. There was a lot of times where it was really hard.
Yeah.
And scary.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another story in the Cajun Bayou. And this was me at a moment of weakness when I didn't have my open heart brain engaged. We had been paddling for 30 miles. We were dead tired. It was 5, 6 o'clock at night. The sun was going to be going down in an hour, and there was nowhere to camp because it's a swamp. And we happened across this fish camp where there were 6 guys that were in fishing boats by a trailer on the shore, and we asked them if there was anywhere where we could camp, thinking maybe they would let us set our tents up on their lawn. They said, no, we have a camp down the river a half a mile, and they explained it to us, and we tried to paddle there, and we didn't see it. They must have been watching us from the shore, and they come up in these big Cajun boats that are they're kind of like the floating equivalent of like an SUV. I mean, you can run them into rocks and they won't sink. but they were they were speaking English, but it was very Cajunized English, and I probably got about every sixth word. And they were, I'm not a big beefy guy, right? And these guys looked like they could have been linemen for LSU, they were big guys. And I started thinking, like, we're in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
And where are these guys taking us? And I was convinced that something bad was going to happen. And my cousin keeps telling me, "No, it's good. You're just overthinking this." And there were a couple of times I'm like, "Okay, this is when they're going to kill us." And they were totally cool. They left us a bunch. Here's some bugs today. The bugs are going to be bad. Here's some white claws for you. They brought us all they had, and they were totally cool. But it was like it took me like an hour to get out of my head. I was my own worst enemy at that point. But that's what happens when you're tired. But you have to be able to reflect on that and see where you could have done that better and learn from it.
What was your mindset going into your first trip? What did you have to do to prepare for it?
So it's funny that the Mississippi, I probably had been dreaming about and planning it for almost 10 years. But that's not like daily, right? But I would say I spent, hours and, probably maybe a total of 100 hours of my life, on days off and stuff, like determining what kind of gear I was going to need, scouring all the blogs and reading any adventure paddling books I could get my hands on. Seeking out people that had done the trip and just picking their brain, right? Because it's like the books are helpful, but talking to somebody that's done it helps, right? Because it makes it more real. And I mean, shoving off from the headwaters of the Mississippi, okay, the Mississippi River at its headwaters is as wide as me to my brother. That's how wide the Mississippi is. And it's like that deep. I mean, and we had to push our boats walking in the water for the first, quarter mile just to get them so the water was deep enough to float. And I was, most of the time when I'm nervous, I kind of tell myself that I'm nervous, excited, right? Because it's like, nervous is okay, right? And being afraid is okay. It's like people think, "Oh, I'm not courageous." Well, if you can do something you're afraid of doing, that means you're courageous. That's what courage is, So it's taking that first step and then knowing you have to do that again and again and again and again. And I think we figured out it was like 12 million paddle strokes or something like that, and you got to do all of those one at a time. There's no shortcut to that. And you have to be okay with suffering a little bit, because there's going to be some times when it hurts, but there was always so much amazing stuff. Visually, the sounds of nature and the people you meet and that sense of, you did the first day and it's like you feel proud of the fact that I paddled 25 miles today. That's freaking good. So and what I had spent a lot of time creating a float plan that was a day by day thing. And one of the things that you learn on a trip like that, and it's kind of a metaphor for life, is you plan it, and then once you start doing it, the plan changes. I would say 95% of the float plan that we did, that I had used, was useless. But it got me prepared for whatever else was coming.
How do issues like culture, gender, and socio-economic status relate to kayaking?
Well, I think we touched on a little bit on the people that we met on the river. I mean, most of the people that helped us were not wealthy. And we paddled through a lot of river towns that at the current state, their best years were behind them, right? The interstate system bypassed these towns, right? The river was their lifeblood, because back in the steamship eras, all these little towns were the places that steamships stopped to get supplies and fuel for the engines, right? Now the big boats that they have are diesel and they don't need to stop at all. So these towns they're struggling to kind of reinvent themselves in a digital economy, but you can see towns that are figuring that out. Like the town of Wabasha, Minnesota has it figured out. Cape Girardeau, Illinois has it figured out. They've embraced the culture of the river and kind of wove it in through the rest of the town. The restaurants are kind of river themed, and it's a very, very vibrant place. So, we saw the haves and the have-nots on the river, and a lot of people doing the best they could. And even if they were in the category of just doing the best they could, they were still happy. It's like I said, money doesn't buy you happiness. It just gets you a nicer car. It's not, your car's not going to take you away from your problems, So it's like happiness starts in your heart, and you got to find it, and you got to actively seek it.
Are there a lot of females on the river?
I would say we encountered one, when we were on the river, there was a woman from New York who was a stand-up paddleboarder, and she was the first woman to solo the river on a paddleboard. She was a badass. But yeah, she was, and the Army Corps wouldn't let her lock through the locks because her boats didn't have sides on them. They made her haul her shit all the way around the lock.
Does everybody know what a lock is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did everybody say yes, or is there anyone who doesn't?
So a river, as it meanders down its path, it goes through land mass elevation changes, right? And that can speed the river up. But if you want the river to be navigable for commercial barge traffic, so the lock and dams make the river level, right? So it's kind of like falling. You build a wall, and then you can control the height of the river here, but you have to have a little doorway to get through that wall. So that's what a lock is. It's doors that open, they flood it, the boat goes in, doors close behind it, they drain the water out, and the boat goes up. So it's kind of a stair step. That experience is really awesome, by the way. Going through a lock, it was really cool because you're in this big wall, and you're in there by yourself because they won't let you go in with a big boat because they don't want you to get squished. So you have this giant lock that's a half mile long, and your little boat's in there, and you're hanging onto the side, and they opened it. It costs them the same amount of money to let me go through as it does these big boats, and I have every right to use it. So it was really cool. Did you have a question?
How many locks did you go down?
The Mississippi has 27. And then on the upper Mississippi, there are 13 dams that don't have locks, and you have to portage around those. So you have to get out, haul all your stuff around below the dam, and then reload your kayak and get back in. So we had, we were called portage wheels. Am I chipping your finger?
No, I'm actually just going to put up a map.
So the portage wheels allow you to put your boat on a set of wheels, and it's kind of like a little dolly for you, right? And if we got to the point where we didn't have to unload our boats, we would just put those wheels on in the water and we just pull them up the ramp. And we got it down. You do anything often enough, you get kind of good at it. So so that's what and a lot of times, if we were going to paddle through a town and there was like an Airbnb we were going to go to, or a grocery resort, we would haul our boats with us. So we're walking through these little towns, like cars are here, and we're hauling our boats on the wheels, like nothing to see here, guys. This is totally normal, But so this is the Tennessee, but Knoxville, That's where the University of Tennessee is, all the way. It's one of the few major river systems in the U.S. that flows north and south.
I got another question out of curiosity. Like, how heavy is your boat with all your kit and everything on there?
200 and something pounds, 220 pounds. So in a boat, it's not like the nice thing, it's not like backpacking where weight is critical, right? In a kayak, is the only place you can store stuff in from the hatches or on the deck. You have a picture of my boat with the all loaded? So you have to be able to, so packable size is the key, right? It's like you gotta find that stuff that can roll up small, and you stuff the skinny stuff in the pointy parts of the boat, you know, and you kind of work your way back. So we were able to do things like have chairs, which on a big backpacking trip you couldn't, right? Because it's too heavy. Here we go. Yeah. So you can see, so there's the hatch there, and then the hatch behind. So that hatch there is going to be from this bulkhead all the way to the tip. So you're loading everything from the tip back, right? And then on the back here, this is my I think I screwed this up. So that's my portage wheels. I have my portage wheels on the back in a bag, and then over on top of that is a hydration pack with water in it. So everything's got to be in so that the flip. So it's got to be in arm's reach. So everything you need has got to be reachable from your kayak. Otherwise, you don't have it. You know. So.
There's other stuff.
Yes, this is you got to check that sign out.
Oh,
That
yeah.
happened in our country. We moved 10,000 people that used to live in Alabama and Tennessee and Kentucky and North Carolina, and we said, we want your stuff, and we're going to put you on the crappiest land we can find in the middle of the country, where you don't know how to grow things and you don't know what to hunt for. And the Tennessee River was a big part of the Trail of Tears. If you ever have a chance to study the Trail of Tears, it's a worthwhile lesson for sure.
Have you ever fallen out of your kayak?
No.
Really?
Actually,
That's,
I take that back. The only times I've fallen out was when I was getting out.
oh, okay.
And it's one of those, like, I've been sitting for 12 hours and my legs are stiff, and you're so tired, you're like, I'm not gonna pay attention, I'm gonna get out. And then of course you fall and you try to grab, and then it just tips and the whole thing fills. I mean, my cockpit holds up like 300 gallons of water. So you're having to bail it out and pump it out, and so.
Yeah.
But
No, one more here. Have you ever like raced your kayak at all? Like hit out a rock sort of thing and started feeling water?
yeah, there's a place in Minnesota. It's called Sauk Rapids. So the Mississippi goes through a drop. The upper Mississippi, there's no barge traffic, so they don't have to worry about, rocky rapids and stuff like so. We scouted it and thought we had the line figured out. I mean, the river's wide. It's probably 300 yards wide there, and it's hauling. There's waves like this, and I thought I had the line, and I missed where I wanted to go, and I went through this hole. Like when water falls over a rock, it kind of creates, it goes up and then it comes back. That's called a hole. So I hit this hole, and I just heard a bam, and I got to, I was taking it was a little water in my boat. I just thought it was splashed. And when we got out, I had 2 big holes under my seat, like the size of apples. And so I had, you have this stuff that's called patch tape. It looks like clear cellophane tape, but it's really strong. And I had to, so for that, I think that was like on day 5. And so the other 30 days that I paddled that stretch, I had to replace that tape every morning because otherwise my boat would have filled up with water. So, and I had one time when my air mattress had a leak in it. This is the last 10 days, and it would deflate every 2 hours. So every 2 hours I had to wake up and blow my air mattress up again and then try to go to sleep. Yeah.
The weather was always perfect, right?
Well, we had to ride out 3 days of Hurricane Delta in Mississippi. Luckily, we found there was a river angel that had a small little cabin in his backyard, and he let us stay there for 3 days. While we were getting 12 inches of rain a day. There's no way you could have paddled in that, and it would have been awful camping in it. So, so the guy's actually he's hiking the Appalachian Trail right now. Parking up this guy's right. And so that was a lot of hot when it's really hot. Everything on the river is magnified. So when you're really low on the water, the wind feels stronger. The sun feels hotter. So there was a lot of, I think I lost in that first 7 weeks, I think I lost like 35 pounds or something like that. And, it was mostly water. But, yeah. And paddling in the rain is fun as long as there's no lightning. But we got chased off the river quite a few times with lightning too.
One of the storms that you endured where you almost lost your boat, or John almost lost his boat.
That was on the Tennessee. We had there was a straight line wind that came up right after we had made camp at a marina. We were camped up in this on a bluff that overlooked the river. It was really a beautiful sight, and it was like a 75-mile-an-hour wind, and it just collapsed our tents, and our boats were on the portage wheels, and his canoe was half hanging off that bluff, and if that wind had blown a little bit longer, it would have been in the river, and by the time we made it out there, we would have been having to hire a boat to go look for it. But that was the only time. Only 2 real life endangering situations, but other than that, it was pretty cool. You can read about that. My wife didn't know about it until my cousin published a book on the Mississippi. She's like, "What? That happened? What? You didn't tell me about that." I'm like,
Yeah.
I wasn't really gonna tell you about that, but no.
Are you going to tell us about it?
I can. Do we have time?
Now I'm curious. Yes.
So, okay, there's a stretch on the Mississippi that's, I think you're south of Memphis, Tennessee. You remember the Army Corps of Engineers is tasked with making the Mississippi River navigable. They gotta make sure those barges can get through with their product. That's their job. And so there are these stone kind of structures that are called wing dams that go from the shore towards the middle of the river, so that it forces the current into the middle, which keeps the center of the channel clear of sediment. Because if the sediment piles up, then the river is not deep enough for the barge. And this is the only spot in the river where we encountered wing dams that were not coming in. They were actually parallel to the channel. And it was, the current was probably 8 miles an hour, and we've never had current like that. And we tried to get around that and and there was a ton of barge traffic. Now these barges are, a barge float is like 280 feet long and about 60 feet wide. And that's kind of think of it as like a cell. So the barge tow is going to have, some of them on the lower Mississippi would be 8 wide of those, and then another 8 long. So they're like a half mile long. I mean, the pilots have no idea what's in front of them, right? And so here we are in this channel where the wing dams are parallel, and it's kind of keeping us in the main channel where the barges are. And I'm trying to back up and let this barge come past me. He's going upstream, I'm coming down. And the water it's sucking me right into the channel, and I could not go anywhere else. And so the only thing I could do is paddle as hard as I can, as straight down the river, and split the gap between this wall and the side of this boat that is, 20 feet high, and it looks like a steel wall. And then at the end of a tow, these boats are, the propellers are so strong that they're kicking up a 10 to 15 foot wake behind them. And it was, once I cleared the boat, the tugboat, and I had to cut to the left so that it didn't get sucked into that other stuff. And I had never paddled so hard in my life. It was one of those, adrenaline to save your life kind of stuff, and we made it through, and I was shaking. And about half a mile down, a Coast Guard helicopter flew over us coming up the river. And I maintained that the pilot thought he had killed me, and they were coming to look for me. But we just waved at them and kept paddling. But that was for sure the sketchiest moment on the trip. And that was like, I don't know, day 80 or something like that.
It's not polite to ask someone their age, but
You can.
how old are you?
62.
And you started kayaking when? Long distance kayaking.
Well, really long distance, probably 57.
Do you wish you started earlier?
I couldn't have done the stuff I wanted to because I wouldn't have been able to get off, so it was the right time. But I mean, you could do a trip like, there are a lot of people in college that will spend their summer doing the Mississippi or doing the Tennessee, because if you have that ability to have time off, or if you take a gap year after college and you go into the workforce, I mean, it's a great life experience to take you into your career. So that picture with me on the paddle race is at the Gulf of Mexico. Oh, I'm sorry, no, that's where the Tennessee meets the Ohio. That's our usual celebration pose.
So Jeff has a blog. It's linked for you on our slides, where you can see pictures. You can just read about some of the different sections of his paddling.
So I have a page on both of the big trips I've done, Tennessee and Mississippi. On those will be resources like, if you scroll down, there's an overview map.
Oh man, I did
Did I break it? Oh, it's probably blocked on
my school.
float plan, and there should be links to the videos too. Anyway, so I try to make all of that stuff available. So there we go. Yeah. In case you can't sleep at night, you want to read about some old guy with a paddle in his hand.
Some old guy. And then he's also got a YouTube channel. So we should be watching for you again to be paddling in a year.
Well, I'm gonna be paddling my solo canoe or kayak this week for this Sunday for the first time in 6 or 7 months since the stroke. So that'll be my test on how my arm and my balance handles a single boat. I've been in a couple of tandems with my buddy in the last month and a half, but this will be my first. And the Erie Canal, which starts in Erie, Pennsylvania, and crosses all of upstate New York to Albany, New York, and then the Hudson River mixed, merges with that, and then you take that all the way south to the Statue of Liberty, so that will be our trip, and that should be in the fall of 23.
So I know you said that you had a stroke here 12 months ago. How ready do you think you would be for a long distance kayaking?
That's why I'm giving myself 18 months to get ready for it.
You just don't you feel like a percentage of the way there, but
Oh, yeah, I mean, the furthest I've paddled since the stroke is probably a mile. You know, it's gonna
Starting
be
over.
baby, like the turtle, you know? Gotta get to the arc eventually, you know? But it's those long-term goals that you just have to set your sight, and it's the millions of goals that you accomplish that you string them together gets you to that point.
Any other last questions?
You guys are really being easy on me.
Yeah. Well, you are more than welcome to contact him through his blog as well if you have
Yeah.
another question, or if you down the road someday see that maybe I do want to do something like that. A great resource. Thanks, Jeffy.
You bet. Thank you guys.
You have 6 minutes to yourselves. Do as you wish. If you have any questions for Jeff, feel free to pop up there and ask him. Yeah.
Oh, I'm.